All right, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today we're going to be talking about proper names. Might seem like a really basic thing, right? Just like how we name stuff.
Yeah.
But it gets pretty deep pretty quick.
Yeah, names seem really simple. But when you start thinking about them, it's like, well, how do they work? What do they mean? What are they doing? It gets really complicated really fast.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, everyone listening, I'm sure you're all pretty into thinking about this kind of stuff. And this is like one of those things where, it reveals a lot about how we think, you
Yeah.
know? Like just this basic thing we do all the time, giving names to things. It says a lot about our language and thought processes.
Totally. And
Yeah.
it gets into meaning. Like, what does it even mean for a word to mean something? And reference how do words hook onto the world? And then it even touches on big questions, like how do we even know anything at all?
Yeah, so like it's not just about names. It's about all these big questions in philosophy. So for this deep dive, we're going to be pulling a lot from the names entry in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And that's going to be our guide as we go through all these different philosophical ideas about how names work and what they mean, what their job is.
Yeah, it's like a really dense entry, but, it's kind of like the state of the art in this little philosophical corner of the world.
It is.
And it basically starts by asking, do names have meaning like other words? Or do they just kind of point to things without meaning getting in the way?
And that's a good question, right? Like if I say Socrates, does that mean something in the same way that, I don't know, table means something?
Right. And it gets tricky because you can describe Socrates, teacher Plato, all that.
Right. But is that the meaning of the name Socrates? It's not that simple, is it?
Not at all. So we'll kind of go through different ways of answering that question.
Right.
Some think they're like shorthand for descriptions. Others say they're more like tags. We'll get to all that.
Yeah. But before we get into all that, we should probably talk about something that seems a little boring, but it actually sets the stage for all this, like, deeper stuff, like syntax, the grammar of proper names.
Okay, yeah. So the Cambridge Grammar of English
Mm-hmm.
actually makes this distinction between proper nouns and proper names, and it's a little subtle.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's important, right?
Yeah, definitely. So like a proper noun is like a word, like, Alice or Walker.
Mhm.
But a proper name, that's more like a whole phrase. So Alice Walker, that's a proper name made up of two proper nouns. But then like just Alice, that can be a proper name all by itself. It's just one proper noun.
Right, right. So it's not always like a one-to-one thing between the word and the name, right?
Exactly. It can get a little fuzzy.
And this is where it gets, I think, kind of interesting because it's not just proper nouns, right? Proper names can use other parts of speech too.
Yeah, for sure.
Like think of Brooklyn Bridge. Bridge isn't a proper noun. That's just a regular noun.
Right.
Or the Raritan River, the is a determiner.
Uh-huh.
The Bronx, same thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the Golden Gate Bridge, which is a proper name with no proper nouns at all.
Right.
So it's like there's a lot of different ways to build these names.
It really shows how flexible language is.
Mm-hmm.
And that poses a challenge for, like, theories about how these names work,
Yeah.
right? Because you've got personal names, which tend to follow, like, a first name, last name structure, at least in our culture.
Yeah.
But then you've got bridge names, with articles and common nouns. And then there's, like, names with this weird ambiguity.
What do you mean, ambiguity?
Like the New York Public Library.
oh, right.
Like, what's going on there? How many news are we talking about? It's not always clear, like, how these adjectives and nouns are working together in a name.
Right. And so to like make sense of all this, there's this idea of a proper nominal. And basically it's the core part of the proper name without any extra stuff like determiners. So for the Raritan River, the proper nominal would be Raritan River.
Okay.
And for just Alice, it's just Alice.
That is-
makes sense.
Yeah.
And what's important for the philosophy side of things is that these proper nominals can act like adjectives too.
Oh, interesting.
Like a Bronx resident. They can modify other nouns.
Yeah, like every University of California, from Berkeley to Santa Cruz.
Right. And that kind of makes you wonder, right? Like, are these adjective uses the original thing and then they can be used as names too? Or are they totally separate things? Like,
Right.
are we kind of forcing them to be names when they're really adjectives?
Right.
Like how we can use a noun as a verb sometimes?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, are we bending the rules of language
Yeah.
to make these proper names work?
Right, right. And all of this affects how we classify proper names grammatically.
So where do they fit in with the other parts of speech?
Exactly. They're usually seen as definite noun phrases. So they're kind of like definite descriptions.
Oh, okay.
Like, the philosopher who taught Alexander the Great.
Right, right. So they're like descriptions, but they're definite.
And they're also kind of like pronouns and demonstratives, like this or that.
Yeah, okay. So they point to specific things.
Exactly. And this is important for a big question about meaning, right? Because if they're kind of like definite descriptions, that supports the view that maybe names are just a kind of hidden definite description.
Hmm, interesting. So instead of saying Socrates, we're really saying, like, the guy who drank hemlock.
Something like that, yeah. But it
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that.
No, it could also be that they're like their own special category. They point to things in a definite way, but
Yeah.
they're not descriptions.
Right. So the grammar, it gives us some clues, but it doesn't solve the puzzle completely.
Exactly. Syntax and semantics, they're related but not the same.
Right, right. Now, another thing to think about is this. When we use a name like Alice, are we talking about one specific person named Alice? Or is it more like a label that can apply to lots of different people?
Oh, so like, are there lots of Alices running around, or is it just one true Alice?
Yeah. Like, are they homonyms? Like, how bank can be a place to keep money or the side of a river?
Right, right. Totally different meanings for the same word.
Exactly. So is it like that with names? And this matters because, well, if a name can refer to different people, then how do we figure out what it means?
Yeah, it gets messy if Alice can mean all these different people. What's the common thread there?
Right. And this is where it gets really philosophical. Like, is Alice one word with lots of different reference, or are there actually lots of different Alice words, each with its own, like, specific meaning and reference?
Well, hold on. So, like, every time someone new is named Alice, we're making a new word.
Well, some philosophers think so. Like Kripke Kaplan, they argued that what seems like the same name might actually be different names that just sound the same, each with its own little rule book for who it refers to.
It's like they each have their own little naming ceremony, like in those fantasy books.
Right, yeah.
This Alice is for the warrior princess. This Alice is for the baker.
Exactly.
Okay, that's kind of wild.
It is. It is. But even if we don't go that far, there are other ways to talk about this.
Okay.
Philosophers use terms like use of a name, name using practice, naming convention.
Okay, so it's like we're acknowledging that there are all these different Alices out there, but maybe we don't need to invent a new word every time.
Right. It's more about how the name is used in a particular context.
Right. Like when I say Alice, you know who I'm talking about because of how I'm using the name, not because there's only one Alice in the entire universe.
Right. Exactly. So as we go through all this, we'll have to keep both of those ideas in mind. Like maybe Alice is one word with lots of uses, or maybe it's lots of words that just happen to sound the same.
It's like we're juggling two different theories at the same time.
Arr!
Okay, so I think we're ready for the main event. Let's talk semantics.
Let's do it.
The meaning, the extension, the nitty-gritty of what proper names are all about.
Okay. So with common nouns, it's pretty straightforward. Like
Fine.
bachelor, we know what that means, right?
A married man?
Exactly. And that meaning tells us who the word applies to. All the bachelors out there.
Yeah, it's like a rule. If you're an unmarried man, you're a bachelor.
Right. But what about proper names like Socrates?
Yeah, does Socrates have a meaning that tells us who it refers to?
That's the million-dollar question. Because some names, they seem like they might have meanings, but not in the same way.
Oh, yeah. What do you mean?
Like if someone calls their kid Merlot,
Oh.
like the wine, that's kind of playful. It doesn't really tell us anything about the kid.
Right. Or like Theodore means gift of God, I think. But that doesn't mean every Theodore is a gift from God.
Exactly.
So those kinds of meanings, they don't really determine who the name refers to. It's just a coincidence or a bit of fun.
Right. So what we're really interested in is, do proper names have a meaning that dictates their reference?
Yeah, like with bachelor, the meaning is the rule. Unmarried man.
Exactly. Does Socrates have a rule like that?
That's the big philosophical debate. And it's not an easy one. It gets us thinking about what meaning even is.
It does. Like, let's take Alice, for example.
Okay.
There's no simple definition for Alice, like there is for bachelor.
Right. You can't just say Alice means woman who, like fill in the blank with some specific characteristic.
Right. It's just all the people who are called Alice. So it's tempting to think that those individual connections, they're the primary thing. Like the name doesn't have a meaning, it just gets attached to people.
Yeah, it's like the meaning comes from the people, not the other way around.
Right. But then some philosophers say, well, the easiest way to describe all those Alices is to say they're all named Alice.
That's true. It's like a metalinguistic thing.
Hmm.
We're using language to talk about language.
Exactly. And that's one way of thinking about the meaning of generic names. Like Alice means the person called Alice.
But hold on. That sounds a little circular, doesn't it? Like we're just saying the name again.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges for this kind of theory.
It's like saying a cat is anything that's called a cat.
Right. It doesn't really explain anything. We need to find a way to break out of that circle.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try a different name. Socrates.
Yeah.
Now, unlike Alice, Socrates usually refers to just one guy.
Right.
And we can describe him pretty easily, like the teacher of Plato and Xenophon.
Right.
And actually, some dictionaries even do that. They give you those kinds of descriptions. But here's the thing. Even though that description fits Socrates perfectly, it doesn't mean that's the meaning of Socrates.
So even though it's true, it's not the same as the meaning. Okay, I think I'm getting it.
Right. It's like I could describe a cat as a furry animal with retractable claws. But that doesn't mean that's the meaning of cat.
So right, it's just a description.
Exactly. And there's a difference between a description and a meaning. A description might pick out the right thing, but it might not be what the word actually means.
It's like we can describe things in lots of different ways, but only some of those descriptions get at the essence of what the word means.
Exactly. So back to Socrates.
Right.
It refers to a specific guy, but maybe the reason it does, it's not because it has a meaning like the teacher of Plato. Maybe it's something else. Like maybe it's because of how the name has been used over time, the history of the name.
So it's more about how the name connects to the world than about some dictionary definition.
Right. And this is an important distinction, like how a name refers to something might be different from what it actually means.
Okay, so it's possible that a name refers to something without having a traditional meaning. That's a tricky idea.
It is, but that's what some philosophers are arguing for.
Let's get into that then. How can a name refer without meaning? This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Okay, so let's talk about cognitive significance.
Cognitive significance, what's that?
So this is the idea that names, even when they refer to the same thing, can have different meanings to us.
Okay, what do you mean? Like, how could two names for the same thing have different meanings?
Well, think about Hesperus and Phosphorus. They both refer to Venus, the planet.
Right.
But if you don't know that, then Hesperus is visible in the evening and Phosphorus is visible in the evening. It sound like they're talking about different things.
Ah, I get it.
Mm.
So even though they refer to the same thing, they have different cognitive significance. Like they evoke different thoughts, different ideas.
Right, like one sounds like an evening star and the other sounds like, I don't know, something else.
Yeah, something more mysterious.
And this is Frege's famous point, right? Like, even though they refer to the same thing, they have different senses.
Right. Different ways of presenting the same object.
Exactly. And there's a great example of this in Wharton's novel.
Oh, yeah, the one with Miranda and the Abbot.
Yeah. With Miranda and Mirandolo, like the abbot thinks they're different people, even though they're actually the same person.
Right. He's got all these ideas about Miranda performing and her twin brother coming back to the monastery. It's hilarious.
It is. But it shows that even if you know two names refer to the same thing, they can still have different meanings for you. They come with different baggage.
Like different associations, different expectations. It's like they tell different stories, even though it's the same character.
Exactly. And this gets really tricky when we talk about what people believe or know.
What do you mean? How does this relate to belief?
Well, like, if Daphnis believes that Hesperus appears in the evening, it doesn't mean he believes that Phosphorus appears in the evening, even though they're the same thing.
Oh, right. Because he might not know that Hesperus and Phosphorus are the same thing.
Exactly. So you can't just substitute one name for the other and expect the meaning to stay the same. That's what we call the problem of substitutivity.
Okay, so even though they refer to the same planet, they don't work the same way in every sentence.
Right. Which suggests that there's more to these names than just their referent.
Right. There's something else going on.
And you might think, well, this is because they have different meanings.
Yeah, that makes sense. If Hesperus means something different from Phosphorus, then that would explain why you can't just swap them out.
But here's the thing. This kind of problem, it's not just with proper names.
Oh, really? So it's a bigger issue.
Yeah, it happens with other referring expressions, too, like even with common nouns.
So can you give me an example?
Sure. Like bachelor and unmarried man.
Okay.
They mean the same thing, right?
Yeah. But if someone doesn't realize that, they might think John is a bachelor is true, but John is an unmarried man is false.
Ah, okay. So even if the meanings are the same, people might not know that, and that can mess things up.
Right. So cognitive significance, it's important, but it doesn't necessarily tell us everything about meaning.
So it's more about how we think about things than about the actual meaning of the words themselves.
Exactly. Now, one way to think about cognitive significance is through identifying information.
Identifying information.
Yeah, like the stuff we associate with a name in our heads, like Strawson's view.
Okay.
So say you know two different people named Zura Jakob.
All right.
You probably have different descriptions for each one in your mind, right?
Yeah, like one Zuri Jacob is the philosopher, and the other one is, I don't know, my friend's cat.
Right. So when you hear the name, you automatically think of one of those sets of information.
That makes sense. So the different cognitive significance comes from the different information we have about each person. Exactly. But is that information the meaning of the name?
Ah, so is that what the name means? I don't know. It's starting to feel like that might be a bit too simple.
Yeah, there are some problems with that. Like, different people might have different information about the same person.
Right. Like, my description of Zira Jakob, the philosopher, is probably different from your description, even though we both know who we're talking about.
Exactly. And also, sometimes the information we use to identify someone might not be enough to actually, like, pick out the right person in the world.
Oh, okay. What do you...
Like, say you describe Cicero as the Roman author.
Okay.
Well, his brother was also a Roman author.
Right. So that description doesn't uniquely identify him.
Exactly.
So that's a problem for equating identifying information with meaning.
It is. And there's another problem. Sometimes the descriptions we have are just plain wrong.
Oh, yeah. Like people thinking Columbus discovered America.
Exactly. So if that was the meaning of Columbus, then lots of sentences about Columbus would be false.
Right.
Which is weird. So these descriptions, they're important for how we think about names, but they might not be the meaning itself.
So we're back to square one. We've got these descriptions. They're useful, but maybe they're not the meaning. What else is there?
Well, there's this idea from Frege about sense.
Sense.
Yeah. And it's kind of tricky. But basically, it's the way a name presents its referent. Like Hesperus and Phosphorus, they have different senses, even though they refer to the same thing.
Okay, so it's like different ways of thinking about the same planet. One is the evening star. The other is, I don't know, something else.
Right.
And this sense, is that the meaning?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay. So even sense isn't the same as meaning.
Right. The important thing to remember here is that meaning is like the thing that determines the referent. And that might not be the same as the sense.
Got it. So we have to be careful about these distinctions, meaning reference, sense, they're all connected, but they're not the same thing. Okay, so we've got this whole mess of descriptions and senses and identifying information. It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. But let's bring in another concept. Something that philosophers love to argue about. A priori knowledge.
Oh, okay. A priori.
Yeah. So basically, it's knowledge that we have without needing any experience. Like, bachelors are unmarried.
Right. You don't need to go out and interview bachelors to know that. It's just true by definition.
Exactly. And then there's a posteriori knowledge. That's stuff we need experience to know, like the earth is round.
Right. You can't just figure that out by thinking about it. You need to see it, or at least have some evidence.
Exactly. So now imagine if Socrates meant the teacher of Plato and Xenophon.
Okay.
Would it be a priori that Socrates taught Plato?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
If that's what the name means, then it has to be true.
But it doesn't really feel that way, does it? Like, it seems like it could have been otherwise.
Yeah, I guess. Like maybe Socrates could have decided to be a potter instead. Or maybe he died young.
Right. It doesn't seem like a logical contradiction to say Socrates never taught Plato. And that's a problem for the descriptivist theory.
Oh, right. Because they're saying the meaning is a description.
Exactly. And if the meaning was a description, then some stuff about Socrates would be a priori true.
But it doesn't feel that way, does it?
It doesn't. But the descriptivists, they have a response to this.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What do they say?
They say that maybe we just don't know the real meaning of Socrates.
Okay. So, like, we think it's contingent that he could have not taught Plato because we're missing part of the definition.
Exactly. Like, if we knew the full meaning, then maybe it would seem a priori that Socrates taught Plato.
Okay, so it's like our intuitions are wrong because we're ignorant. We don't know the whole story.
Right? But, I mean, do you really buy that?
I don't know. It seems like if names had these hidden meanings, we should at least have some inkling of them, right?
Right. Like, we should be able to figure some of this stuff out just by thinking about it.
Yeah.
And this is where the a priorist view comes in.
Okay, what's the a priorist view?
So they say a name's meaning is whatever we as speakers think must be true about it.
Okay, so it's based on our intuitions about what's necessary.
Exactly. Like, if everyone agrees that Socrates was a philosopher just has to be true, then that's part of the meaning of Socrates.
So it's like we're using our intuitions to build up the meaning.
Right. And that way we avoid the whole problem of, like, not knowing the real meaning.
Right. Because the meaning is just whatever we think is necessary.
Exactly.
But hold on, isn't that a bit subjective? Like, what if people disagree?
Yeah, and that's one of the problems with this view. Like, what if some people have different intuitions?
Right. Like with the planet thing. What if someone doesn't know the scientific definition? Do they get to decide what planet means?
Right, right. And also, like, are our intuitions really that reliable? Maybe they're based on incomplete knowledge or even just biases.
It seems like to really figure out the meaning of a word, you need more than just intuitions. You need to look at how it's used, what the experts say, all that stuff.
Exactly. So the a priorist view, it's an interesting attempt to deal with the problem, but it's not a perfect solution.
Yeah, it feels like it's still missing something.
It does. Okay, let's try another angle. Necessity.
Necessity.
Yeah, like logical necessity. So with bachelor, we said it's necessarily true that bachelors are unmarried
Right.
because that's just what the word means.
Yeah, you can't be a bachelor and be married. It's a contradiction.
Exactly. And that's different from a priori knowledge.
Oh, okay. How is it different?
Well, like, some things are necessary, but we only know them through experience.
Okay, give me an example.
Like, the fact that a gold atom has 79 protons,
Okay.
that's necessary, right? Like, that's what makes it gold.
Right.
But we didn't know that just by thinking about gold, we had to do experiments.
Ah, okay. So it's necessary, but we found out through science, not through thinking.
Right. So, now back to names.
Okay.
If Socrates meant the teacher of Plato and Xenophon, would that mean it's necessary that Socrates taught Plato?
Well, if that's what the name means, then yeah, I guess it would have to be necessary.
But again, it doesn't feel that way, does it?
Not really. It still feels like he could have chosen a different path.
Right. It doesn't feel like a contradiction to say Socrates never taught Plato.
Hmm. So there's something different about how necessity works with names.
Exactly. And the source material points out this difference between referring expressions like Socrates and nominal predicates like bachelor.
Okay, nominal predicates, that's a mouthful. What are those again?
Basically, words that describe things, like bachelor.
Okay.
The necessity with bachelor comes from the fact that being a bachelor means being unmarried. Those properties are inseparable.
Right, they go together.
But with names, it's different. Like, even if Socrates has a meaning, it doesn't necessarily mean that Socrates has to have certain properties.
So it's not like a built-in rule.
Right. And we can test this with modal logic.
Modal logic, that sounds scary.
It's not that bad. It's just logic about possibility and necessity. So we can look at sentences like, it's possible that Socrates wasn't human, and it's possible that the teacher of Plato wasn't human.
Okay.
The first one, about Socrates, sounds totally wrong, right?
Yeah, we know Socrates was human.
Right. But the second one, it's at least conceivable, right? Like, maybe Plato had an alien teacher.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine that.
So that suggests that Socrates and the teacher of Plato don't have the same meaning.
Right, because they don't work the same way in these modal contexts.
Exactly. But there's a possible counter-argument here.
Oh, okay. What's that?
Like, maybe those descriptions are referring to roles, not individuals.
Those. What do you mean?
Like, the teacher of Plato could be a role that anyone could fill.
Okay.
And that role could be filled by a human or an alien.
Okay, so it's not about a specific person, but about a function.
Right. And that might explain why you can say it's possible that the teacher of Plato wasn't human.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like anyone could have been Plato's teacher, human or otherwise.
But even if we grant that, it still doesn't tell us much about the meaning of Socrates.
Right, like if there's no connection between the meaning and what's possible or impossible, then what's the point of even having a meaning?
Exactly.
Okay, this is getting complicated. We got descriptions, we've got modal logic, we've got all these different theories. Is there any way to simplify this?
Well, let's try looking at it from the perspective of rules of use.
Okay, rules of use. What are those?
So think about the pronoun I.
Okay.
The dictionary says it